So there are four special positions where the terminal side of the angle where you can't draw a triangle, and that's going to be when your terminal side is on the positive or negative c-axis and when it's on the positive or negative s-axis. So that's when it doesn't form an acute, there's no acute angle. The reference angle is not an acute angle. It's either 0 or pi over 2. So what we do is we just imagine we're on the unit circle, and then the first coordinate of the endpoint of your terminal side on the unit circle is going to be cosine of x, and the second coordinate is going to be sine x. And so you don't have to form a triangle or anything. So I'm starting off with the terminal side on the positive c-axis. That's a reference angle of 0. The actual angle would be 0 plus 2 pi k, where k is any integer. So you're just saying it's 0, but you could also loop around 360 degrees counterclockwise or clockwise as many times as you want, and you still end up with the same terminal side. So as long as the terminal side is there on the positive c-axis, you look at the coordinate of that positive side on the unit circle, it's going to be 1, 0, and that means cosine of x is 1 and sine of x is 0. It's that simple. Okay, cosine x is 1. And then the rest of trig functions you can find from cosine and sine, right? Like secant is 1 over cosine, so that'll be 1 over 1, which is 1. Cosecant is 1 over sine, right? So cosecant x is 1 over sine x. That's 1 over 0. That's not defined. So cosecant for this angle is not defined. And that happens sometimes. The secant, cosecant, and cotangent are sometimes not defined. And sometimes the tangent's not defined either. Sine and cosine are always defined because the denominator is the hypotenuse of a triangle, or in this case you can see it's just the first coordinate of a point on the circle. Okay, so if you're at pi over 2, which is your terminal side of your angle is on the positive s-axis. Remember, the initial side of the angle is always on the positive c-axis, right? So I just drew the terminal side here. Then that place where that side intersects the unit circle has a coordinate 0, 1. That means cosine of that angle, pi over 2, is 0 and sine is 1. The reference angle here is pi over 2. Remember, it has to be positive between 0 and pi over 2. So it's pi over 2. Sine x is 1. So again, secant here, secant x is not defined because that would be 1 over cosine x, 1 over 0, can't do that. Cosecant x is 1 over sine, so that's just 1. Tangent is sine over cosine, that's not defined because you can't divide by 0. Cotangent is cosine over sine, so that's just 0, 0 over 1, 0. Right, so you can find all those other trig functions from the sine and cosine. Okay, so now we are on the negative, your terminal side is on the negative c-axis, then the coordinates on the unit circle would be -1, 0, right? And so cosine of x is -1 and sine x is 0. It's pretty easy, right? I hope. Once you understand it, it's easy. If it seems hard, then you don't understand it yet. You need to think about it more. And maybe draw these pictures yourself and think it through yourself. Okay, so if I have negative pi over 2 plus 2 pi k, where k is any integer, then my terminal side is on the negative s-axis, and that point where it intersects the unit circle is 0, -1. So cosine of x is 0 and sine of x is -1. So that's how those special angles where you can't draw that a triangle, that's how you find the sine and cosine and the other trig functions for those angles.